Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting. It's our first council meeting of 2016, and I also want to just remind everyone that tonight, and actually every council meeting this year, is not only going to be on our webcast from the city, but actually Rogers Community Television 20 will be covering all of the council meetings in 2016, and so I want to thank them for that. We'll begin this evening's council meeting with the singing of O Canada, and I would now invite everyone, as they are able, to stand. And we are the collective choir with the help of a video. A wonderful choir. It's been moved by Councillor Yvonne Fernandez that the minutes of the regular meeting held December 14th, 2015, and the special meetings held December 14th and January 12th, as mailed to the mayor and councillors, be accepted. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none. There is communication with respect to the Syrian refugee crisis, and that will be referred as listed on the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move into the presentations, and for those in the both in the audience today and in the viewing audience, we're pleased to have the council chambers filled this evening as we recognize the first recipients of our Mayor's City Builder Award, which were announced at our New Year's levy on January the 3rd, and we're presenting this evening. The award was first announced in my State of the City speech in March of last year, and it's an award to recognize and bring attention to individuals and groups who have demonstrated a commitment to making our city and community a better place today and in the future. Through the nomination process, we had 22 individuals and organizations that were nominated, and this evening we're here to recognize 6 individuals, 2 of them posthumously, and 1 organization that truly embody the values of a city builder. I'd also like to thank all of their family members and friends who have joined them for this evening. At this point, I'll move to the podium in the middle, and we'll begin the recognition of each individual. Whoops. Okay, so the first individual that we'd like to recognize this evening is Fred Bishop, and Fred is being recognized posthumously. I did have the privilege of sharing the news with Fred that he was selected for the award on January the 2nd when I called all of the award recipients. but unfortunately, Fred passed away in the period since then to today. And so this evening, Fred's wife, Audrey, his daughter, Gail and Melanie, and their grandchildren, Sean, Crystal, and Brad, will be coming forward to receive the award on behalf of Fred. Fred has been a passionate community volunteer and advocate for affordable housing, serving on the board of directors of Kitchener Housing and the Ontario Not-Profit Housing Association Board. He's also served in a variety of City of Kitchener advisory committees, including its Downtown Advisory and Ethnocultural Advisory Committees, as well as other community groups such as the Victoria Park 100th Birthday Committee, and as a volunteer with the 1997 Women's World Hockey Championships. Tom Belanger, General Manager of Kitchener Housing, in his nomination of Fred, noted, "He has made a significant contribution and improved the lives of youth, seniors, and families. Fred and his wife Audrey's lifelong service, outstanding acts of kindness, inspiring charitable work, and neighborhood building will forever be remembered by those he touched." Please join me as I invite Audrey and the family members down to receive the award. Please join me in recognizing Fred Bishop.
Just like to say on behalf of my mom and my family, we're very proud of what my dad has done for housing. Thank you very much for honoring my father.
The next person is somebody else who we lost this past year in our community, and this evening we're recognizing Patrick Doherty posthumously. And we're here today with a number of members of Pat's family, and his wife Gloria and daughters Kelly and Kathy will be coming up to accept the award. Pat Doherty was affectionately known as Mr. Hockey throughout Kitchener. A longtime educator with the Waterloo Region Catholic School Board, Pat's true passion was volunteering, and hockey was his love, where he dedicated more than 50 years to young people and the sport. While hockey was his biggest love, his community efforts also included serving on many community committees and boards, including the City of Kitchener's Parks and Recreation and Safe and Healthy Community Advisory Committees. Pat also spearheaded the installation of automated exterior defibrillators, or AEDs, throughout the city. Pat never lost his passion to help improve the city right up to the time of his passing. He always spread his time around to many groups that desired his vision and experience to help guide their events to a successful finale. His greatest passion was directed to the youth of this city. The many early mornings at the rink helped parents help their children, helping the children learn the skills of sport, or helping guide the staff to ensure a smooth operation was typical activity for Pat year after year, said Gary Draves, president of the Waterloo Regional Boxing Academy and a longtime member of the Kitchener Minor Hockey Board. Pat was a very humble man who never sought recognition for his efforts, yet was honored by many organizations on the municipal, provincial, and federal level. Please join me in congratulating Pat and Pat's family for all that Pat has done for our community.
Just on behalf of my dad and our family, we'd just like to thank for Mayor Verbanovic for the opportunity to be presented with this award. My dad loved this city, and he certainly left a legacy behind that we can certainly follow. He loved the young people of this city, and he loved every age. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Our next recipient is someone that is quite familiar to us and someone you might wake up to some mornings in our community. Local radio personality Mike Farwell is known for his tireless support of all things Kitchener. Co-chair of the City of Kitchener's Neighborhood Strategy Project, vice chair of the Kitchener Public Library Board, and member of the KW Oktoberfest Public Relations Committee is just some of what Mike does. But Mike is best known for his passion and work with Cystic Fibrosis Canada and his Farwell for Hire campaign, a labor of love in memory of his two sisters who he lost to cystic fibrosis many years ago. Melissa Bowman, who nominated Mike, said Mike is simply one of those people you want as a neighbor and as a friend. He works tirelessly to support his community in a wide variety of ways. Citizens of Kitchener benefit from people as giving and as caring as Mike. Chris Cowie, chair of the Waterloo Region Crime Prevention Council, noted, "It is great when we can honor and recognize those that make a significant difference in our community, that selflessly give of their time, their spirit, and their energy for the betterment of our community for all." Mike Farwell is one of those people whose passion and commitment supersedes all obstacles to make things happen in our community. Please join me in congratulating Mike Farwell. For those of you that don't know, that's Ma and Pa Farwell that were there with Mike. Okay, our next recipient is Joseph Fung. Joseph Fung is an accomplished entrepreneur who's considered a thought leader and role model for many young people developing their career within Kitchener and Waterloo region's growing technology and innovation sector. A graduate of Leadership Waterloo Region, Joseph actively encourages his staff to think about a variety of community building issues and then get involved to do something about them. And best of all, he walks the talk from volunteering and serving on the boards of the KW Art Gallery and KW Symphony to writing thought-provoking blogs on issues such as gentrification. Ian Klugman, who nominated Joseph, says Joseph believes that being a contributor in his community is just as important to the health of his company as a business plan. He actively encourages his staff to become involved in charitable and community events and has continued a policy of paid time volunteering at each of his companies over the last decade, including NetSuite. Andrew Bennett, Executive Director of the KW Symphony, notes, Joseph's role has been characterized by personal humility, thoughtful advice, and a conspicuously articulate way of championing the symphony and its work. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Joseph Fung. Okay, the next person that we're recognizing this evening is Jean Markovich. Jean's style of getting things done is described as enthusiastic, quiet, and supportive. Whether by helping a senior shovel and salt their sidewalk or serving as vice president and helping with social media for the Auditorium Neighborhood Association, Jean demonstrates what it means to be a city builder. Also a graduate of Leadership Waterloo Region, Jean volunteers with Junior Achievement Waterloo Region, the Hope Spring Cancer Support Center, and countless other organizations to help make Kitchener a great place to live. Jean enjoys connecting with seniors and values the contribution they've made to our city. She sets a great example for all of us and demonstrates what a difference one person can make in many lives. Ray Sands, who nominated Jean, notes. Many of us think she should have a job promoting tourism and economic development because she's so passionate about our community, the people, the festivals, the food, the parks and trails, and our local airport. Please join me in congratulating Jean Markovich.
Well, thank you very much for this honor. It was a real pleasure, and I have to thank the people who nominated me and supported me. I have had the opportunity to work with some fabulous people, and I think I'm a product of my environment and of a great community, so thank you very much.
Our last individual award winner is Julia Spencer. Julia Spencer demonstrates that you can never be too young to start being a city builder. A member of the Kitchener Youth Advisory Council, Julia's passion for social justice issues is infectious and has engaged many other youth on issues and committees including youth and mental health, the Gay Straight Alliance, the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, and Me Do We. Julia stands out as a very caring, committed, compassionate, and giving young woman. When I think of Julia Spencer, the words humble community builder immediately come to mind. You would never know by talking to her just how involved she really is and how much she actually does, because she always downplays her own contributions in order to give to others, says Marla Bender, Youth Services Coordinator at the City of Kitchener. To truly know Julia is to know that she does this because she believed it's her duty as a citizen to make her community stronger, and she expects nothing in return. Please join me in congratulating Julia Spencer.
I guess I just want to start off with saying thank you to everybody who nominated me, and a huge congratulations to everyone who was nominated and who won the award as well. I'm in great company, and I'm very excited to continue volunteering and doing work within the City of Kitchener. So, go Kitchener.
And our last award this evening actually goes to not an individual, but an organization, the Lions Club of Kitchener. The Lions Club of Kitchener has been serving our community since 1937. One of numerous service clubs in our community, its approximately 65 members not only continue our annual traditions of the KW Santa Claus Parade and the KW Citizen of the Year Award, but they also support a variety of community initiatives, including the Children's Safety Village and the Dog Guide program. They also were generous contributors to the Kitchener Lions Community Arena and the much-beloved reflecting pool and skating rink in Carl's Air Square at Kitchener City Hall. Ann Whittle, who nominated the Lions Club of Kitchener, says for 78 years, the Lions Club of Kitchener has been contributing to the achievements and success of the City of Kitchener by partnering with the city on joint ventures, as well as giving to individuals and groups in need. The reflecting pool in front of City Hall has been a place where the citizens of Kitchener can come to reflect, relax, read, people watch, skate in the winter, and just enjoy our great city. Through their efforts and contributions, the Lions Club has made a positive impact on youth, seniors, and all citizens of the City of Kitchener. Please join me in congratulating the Lions Club of Kitchener as our final award recipient this evening, and I invite Interim President Mike Hilling up to accept the award.
Mayor Barry, Council, members of the City of Kitchener and Waterloo, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Lions organization here locally to thank you for the awards. Much appreciated. It also shows the community effort that it takes between service clubs and all levels of government to perform well to make a community safe and happy to live in. Thank you.
So once again, a final congratulations to all of our award recipients this evening, as well as to everyone who was nominated. I'd also like to thank those who took the time to nominate individuals at the tail end of last year. We'll be opening up nominations again in the fall of 2016, and certainly encourage people to think about other people that can be recognized next year. And so at this point, this part of the meeting is finished. We'll maybe pause for a minute and invite anyone who wants to stay for the balance of the meeting to do that. But if you have reason to go out and celebrate with family and friends, this is an opportunity to take a moment and leave the council chamber. So thank you. Okay, we have one other presentation this evening, and that's Leanne Loeb, Supervisor for the Source Water Regional Programs, Region of Waterloo. Welcome, Leanne.
Thank you very much. It's very inspiring to hear the good work that so many people have done in this community. So thank you for having me tonight, Mary Verbanovich and City of Kitchener councillors. As you mentioned, my name's Leanne Loeb. I'm Supervisor of Source Water Protection Programs at the Region of Waterloo. So today you will be introduced to the Curb the Salt campaign, which highlights the impacts of salt on our water resources, calls people to do their part, and most importantly, identifies practical ways that everyone can help to keep our water clean, as well as make sure that we're safe during the winter. So we will recognize this as a map of the Region of Waterloo and its area municipalities. The dots on the map show the distribution of our municipal wells, including those supplying water to Kitchener. Although groundwater is naturally protected, it can still be impacted by activities at the surface. In fact, one of the biggest impacts to water quality is from using salt in the winter. Specifically, it's the chloride and sodium. Chloride affects the taste of the water, and sodium can have health implications. Although sodium is a concern, our focus is on the chlorides, because concentrations are increasing in all of our wells. Now you can see on the map the wells and their concentrations. Wells with the highest chloride concentration have large red circles, and those with low concentrations are small green dots. It is not surprising, given the amount of roads, parking lots, and sidewalks, that the wells most impacted are in our urban centres, including Kitchener. In fact, some wells have concentrations above the Ontario drinking water standards. However, normal mixing throughout the distribution system ensures that the water that reaches your home and that's sitting in front of you today does meet acceptable drinking limits. This remains one of our highest priorities because the concentrations continue to increase. So where is all this salt coming from? Municipalities, including the region and Kitchener, are some of the largest contributors, but it's not just the roads. We are also responsible for many facilities, parking lots, sidewalks, and trails. And we're not the only ones applying salt. There's a significant quantity of salt applied on commercial, institutional, and industrial properties. And I mention this not as an exercise to assign blame, but just to emphasize that we all have a role to play to reduce the amount of salt that we're using and to protect our water from salt. And we recognize that it's complicated, trying to maintain safety in the winter. There are many factors to consider when applying salt. One of the biggest challenges is weather. When conditions can change within minutes or kilometers, it can be tough to ensure safe conditions. Another significant consideration are community expectations. When many people expect bare pavement and others are concerned about their pets' paws or damage to landscaping, it can be tough to please everyone. However, liability is one of the biggest reasons we often see over-applications of salt. When you're afraid of being sued if someone falls or has an accident, it can be tough to use less salt, even if that's all that's needed. And as you probably know, using the right tools and products, and more importantly, knowing how to use those products and tools, can make a big difference. So when not used correctly, it can be tough to control your salt or plow the snow. In addition, when there are unclear industry standards outlining best practices, it can be tough to train staff to make defendable decisions. However, one of the most significant considerations that is often forgotten is design. When the design of our parking lots and sidewalks create icy conditions, it can be really tough to maintain safety. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, and you'll notice that I didn't mention water protection. That's not usually a consideration at all when we look at applying salt. Not yet. And I mention this because when surveyed earlier last year, 92% of residents said protecting our drinking water is their top environmental priority. However, only 30% recognize that salt is a concern. In fact, when asked to rank a list of 9 pollutants, salt was listed as number 7, when it's our highest priority. So now you know that salt concentrations are increasing in our wells. Winter salt is widespread across the region by many groups. The community's top environmental priority is water protection, but residents don't recognize salt as a water concern, and they don't apply much salt themselves, but they do influence it with their expectations. So to address these issues, we developed the Curb the Salt campaign with 6 key messages. Recognizing that salt is critical for winter safety. So when you look at this picture, we see an icy driveway. We can also see the residue from the salt that was applied to melt the ice. And I think we can agree that icy conditions are unsafe and salt was applied to help make it safe. But what if there was no ice? Wouldn't that improve safety even more? When I look at this picture, I see a downspout that is leaking water onto the pavement. I see an ice hazard that could be prevented. If the ice wasn't there, we wouldn't need as much salt. Salt is only one way to ensure safety, which is why our first message is prevent ice. When it comes to safety, nothing beats prevention. Property owners, including the City of Kitchener, can make a few changes to prevent ice. Less ice means less salt required and safer conditions for walking and driving. Our second message is shovel sooner than later. This may seem obvious, but unfortunately this is something that we need to promote. When we shovel the snow, we can reduce the icy conditions that happen when people trample on the snow. And we also highlight this as an example as well to not use salt to melt snow. So shovel the snow. To illustrate this point, I look at these 2 pictures here. These pictures were taken on the same day, on the same street. On the left, there is very little salt applied, and on the right, considerably more. 2 different property owners working in the same weather conditions trying to create safety. As we can see on the left, we can create safe conditions with less salt. Our next message is use salt wisely, but what does this mean? It means only using salt on icy areas. It means not using salt to melt snow. It also means applying just a little bit of salt, giving it time to work, and then chipping the ice away. Another option is to use alternatives. So if your goal is to melt the ice, look for environmentally friendly salts, which may work at colder temperatures or be more gentle on your plants. But it's important to note that almost all affordable environmentally friendly salts contain chloride. And it's chloride that we're really concerned about. So even when using alternatives, it's important to use them wisely as well. Now, if your goal is to create traction, you can use sand or non-clumping kitty litter, unlike in this next picture. This is a classic example of unnecessary uses of salt. This is what we're trying to address through our Curb the Salt campaign. This salt is not making it safer. There's not a trace of ice. The salt was not intended, salt is not intended to create traction or melting snow. And unfortunately, again, we need to also promote this message, which may seem like common sense in the winter, but we do encourage residents to wear winter boots. So this alone won't reduce the amount of salt used, but it reminds us all that we have a responsibility for our own winter safety and ensuring that we're ready for whatever conditions we find. And the driver's equivalent, put snow tires on your car. When you replace your all-season tires with snow tires, you'll have better traction and, again, be prepared for whatever winter conditions you encounter. So to wrap up, now you know the 6 key messages of the Curb the Salt campaign: prevent ice, shovel sooner than later, use salt wisely, use salt alternatives, wear winter boots, and put snow tires on your car. Together, they identify 6 ways that we can create safe winter conditions, yet also protect our drinking water. So this winter, you'll see these messages, and hopefully you have already by now, around our community on bus shelters, on buses, in community rate or papers, recreation centers, as well as on the Weather Network. So if you're interested in learning more, please visit curbthesalt.ca to test your salt knowledge with our Think You Know Salt quiz. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, and hopefully you'll better understand then these messages when you see them throughout the community. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Leanne. Great presentation and effective campaign. I've certainly seen it around the community so far. We have one question for you at this point. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Leanne. And certainly has been a great concern for me in my ward, because I have endangered species habitat in Strasburg Creek and Blair Creek as well, that seem to have seen an increase in chlorides when we get our reports. So how much of the chlorides that we're seeing in our water is affecting our health of our citizens? Because there is, whether it's rumor or truth, or maybe you can actually, or myth or not, you can put some truth behind it, that this region has a very high rate of heart disease and stroke that seems to be attributed to the chlorides in our water.
The chlorides do not have a health implication. They are aesthetic. So that means it will affect the taste of the water, but not have any health implications.
Okay, that's good to know. When we discuss curbing the salt, do we also discuss with the MTO the expectation that whether it's the MTO or the drivers, because you did identify that very clearly, that sometimes it's the person and the people's expectations to have the dry pavement and to have the sidewalks that are dry and bare. Do we discuss that with MTO and say, are you using alternatives? We're seeing the implications in our wells and our water.
Certainly the road organizations, including the municipalities and MTO, have been following best maintenance practices for many, many years. So what we're trying to do now is to focus on the parking lots and sidewalks, because that's where we're starting to see the most excessive amounts of salt applied. So as city councillors, all of us have plazas and businesses in our communities. What do you think the best way many times we'll get out of our car and we're walking on exactly that example that you showed. How do we affect that change as well? You've got this great campaign, but I think that we're often, feet on the street, so to speak. Mm-hmm. How do we affect that change? I think there's a number of ways. There are certainly an opportunity to approach the owner, if you happen to know them, and certainly encourage them to hire a Smart About Salt contractor. There is a certification and training program that is offered throughout the province. And again, just raising the awareness that you're concerned about the amount of salt, because they're also hearing oftentimes that there's not enough salt. And so if the more that they can understand that community expects less, then that will hopefully help. Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I also have a question of our staff. If I were to ask you, can you tell me what the region is doing? Can you show to me that the region is cutting back, or because they are, the region and the cities are the ones that are most guilty in this. So, is there anything that you can tell me to show that the region is cutting back?
We are working with the transportation groups in all of the municipalities, including the region, to improve their data collection in terms of their GPS units as well as other technologies. So, we do the anti-icing as well. So before the storm, when you see the stripes on the road, that certainly helps. That's a brine solution, so that requires less salt. So we are working at reducing our own salt. And again, we recognize that every time we bring this message forward, that the community comes back and says, but you're putting a lot of salt on yourselves. And so we try to just remind everybody we all have a role to play. Our past assessments have indicated that it's probably a 50-50 split, or a 60-40 split between municipalities and then industrial, commercial, and institutional properties.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it would be nice if you were able to come here and say, well, last year or 5 years ago, the region used this much salt, and now we're using this much, and there's a big difference. Do the region, and I was a question I'm going to ask our own staff, do we use salt alternatives, or does the region?
Do we have an operations person here who'd like to answer that question? Yeah.
Through the chair, we do use the brine solution that has been referenced, but we also utilize salt as well.
But have we ever considered the salt alternatives in which there is, less sodium? What is there in the alternatives?
As I mentioned there, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, the salt alternatives typically are incredibly expensive compared to traditional rock salt. And because they are chloride-based, at least the affordable ones, there may not be a huge advantage to using them in every situation.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. I'm curious. Thank you. I do have a question of staff.
Councillor Gazzola, go ahead. There's no other questions of the delegation. So if you want to take a seat.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola, go ahead.
No, I look at this advertising that the region is trying to do, and I noticed on the other side of the shoe is this whole question of getting our sidewalks cleared after, one of the ads here says we can't always expect bare pavement, but we do apparently on the other side of the shoe. What can we do about that? Is there anything we can do about that?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as Council may recall, the standard of bare pavement is something that's been set through public consultation and input from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. You may also recall that as part of the report that came forward to you, I think late last year, we noted that the province is looking at this very issue, and so I think we're hoping that sometime in this year we'll get some direction from the province.
I thought it was an interesting point. That's all. I thought to raise it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Okay, we'll now move on to delegations. I want to remind delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentation, and we'll start with item 6A, which is a draft plan of condominium for 460 Belmont Avenue, CSD Report 16-001, and listed on the Committee of the Whole agenda item B6. This is a formal public meeting to consider an application under the Planning Act if a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered. The person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Municipal Board. It may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board. We have one delegation with respect to this item that I'm aware of, and I'll ask if there's any others later on, and that's Mr. Dan Curry. Welcome, Mr. Curry.
Thank you. Dan Curry, MHBC Planning, 540 Binghamton Center Drive, and I can be very brief. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and want to note that we support the staff recommendation. Also note that the draft conditions were worked through in concert with us and with staff, and that we support the draft conditions as well. So with that, I have nothing further to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Curry. We do have one question for you, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you very much. This application is in my ward, and I've read the staff report, and the matter has been circulated and public notice, etc. The report that we have before us was written back in November, and although the public notice went in the record on December the 18th, has there been any concerns raised by any property owners or any objections to this application?
Not that I'm aware of, although maybe staff will want to add to that.
Any questions, any answers from staff?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're not aware of any additional comments since the publication.
Okay, I didn't think there would be for this type of application, so Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to move this report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Curry. You're more than welcome to move it because it didn't come from committee. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Fernandez. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move on to item 6B. Is Jake Lauer here? Welcome, Mr. Lauer. Come on.
I'd like to invite Forrest LeBlanc to the stand as well.
Yeah, you want to come down? Yep.
And we did prepare a slideshow, but if it's too much trouble, then we can just.
Unfortunately, you would have had to get it in ahead of time, so.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, okay.
Salutations, my name is Forrest, and these are my peers, Jake and Blake up in the stands. We have come to propose putting in a new stop sign at the cross section of Church Street and Cedar Street South.
So the cross section is at the top of the hill, by Cameron and, of course, Cortland. And so the issue here is that when you're going up the hill in a car, you cannot see any pedestrian trying to cross the road. And very often I've seen people just speed right up the hill, even though it is a very important intersection for both kids attending Cortland and Cameron Heights, the schools in the area. Not to mention the fact that there are young children living in several of the houses nearby, including one that's just right beside it. And not only do I see them playing sort of by the road or near the road, I have. It should be noted that there was in fact a collision there with a young child who was sent to the hospital due to the lack of a stop sign in the area. And having the stop sign would stop people from sort of unsafely speeding up to the top of the hill and prevent several possible collisions in the future. And the fact that the street still has no stop sign is sort of appalling that we haven't sort of gotten around to stopping sort of these non-safe measures that we're taking. It's strange that the city hasn't sort of gotten around and jumped up on sort of making this a safer area for the kids going around.
Prices and funds are the complicated part. Right now, the budget the city has for signs and other road accessories is $39,770. With this, we can definitely pay the estimated price of $1,000 made by Ken Carmichael from Transportation Services. This includes labor and the materials needed. I'm sure you guys will agree that even if it were a less desirable price, we can really put a price on human life and the safety of our citizens. Please allow the safety to take precedence and save a life. All right, that's it.
That's it. Okay, thank you. And sorry, if I can ask your name, because I didn't catch it when Jake introduced you from up there.
Forrest LeBlanc.
Okay, great, just so that our clerk has that. Thank you, gentlemen. We have lots of questions for you.
All right.
So we'll start with the ward councillor, Councillor Etherington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would compliment both of you for coming here tonight. You're already treading in my footsteps. I was out there looking at the same issue, I think more than a year ago, maybe even the same concern about the same accident. And I agree with you completely that something should be done out there. But at the time, I was out there for a porch meeting with a couple of residents, and I believe it was our transportation official, Ken Carmichael, who was at that meeting, and there was a study done, a traffic study, I believe. Are you aware of that traffic study? No. And I believe the findings, and maybe staff could support me on this or give more information. I believe the finding was that there was not enough traffic in the area to justify a stop sign. And I believe our transportation officials do not believe that generally that stop signs help solve this kind of problem. But I would ask staff, Mr. Chair, either now or when appropriate, to add to that. By the way, was this one of the projects that came out of our student visits to City Hall?
Yes, it was.
I thought so. Thank you.
I think it should be noted that all the other streets sort of on the same road all have stop signs as well, and some of them I've seen less cars going up and down it. Just.
I don't disagree with you, so we have to hear from staff.
Okay, so we'll once we're done the questions, I'll come back to you, Councillor Etherington. I will note to our young advocates that there are people in Cedar Hill who are actually listening on Rogers this evening and cheering you on this issue. Councillor Ioannidis. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Barry. I just want to thank the guys for coming in. I know I was with Jake on the radio talking about our youth forum and stuff, and I told him he was a natural, and he's continuing that natural path towards being a great community individual. One question I just wanted to ask you guys is, do you guys live near the neighborhood, like near there, or is it just from school?
I do. I lived just sort of nearby the neighborhood. I actually walk on the street on my way to school and to several friends' house just nearby. Yeah.
Okay. I noticed that you guys mentioned Mr. Carmichael's name. Did you guys make contact with him, or?
Yeah, we had an interview with him talking about sort of issues that could resolve around sort of ICE issues and the fact that the city may have to go through and solve that as well.
Okay, that's good. And the other question is, did you guys ever make contact with your ward councillor?
No.
Because that would be your first. That would be probably one of your first contacts.
Fair enough. Yes.
Anyways, good job, gentlemen. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Jake and Forrest, for coming in, and your colleague in the gallery, and your teacher, Mr. Kemp. So I really am glad to see that you were inspired to take it to the next step. I want to ask you, is there a stop sign for Church Street going the other way already?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so you would envision this as a four-way stop if you had your way?
Yes.
Okay. And so on the other streets that you noted have stop signs, are there four-way stops there that are working the way?
Yes, there are.
All right. So also, is that not where there are two, like the hill, it's at the peak of a hill that you have to go up and then down again if you're going straight? Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be perhaps, do you see that as a challenge?
Actually, yeah, I do, which is sort of why we went to the whole thing with Ken Carmichael. And we did talk about, the fact that I know it's kind of strange with the presentation we just had about ICE, but we may need to actually salt it just because there could be issues with cars possibly sliding back down the hill.
I see, yeah. Or salt alternatives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. I'm always enthusiastic when I see young people come and speak about a cause that they're passionate about. So one question I have is, when you see people stopping, do they stop at the Church Street stop sign, or do they roll through it?
They stop. I imagine that there are people who just sort of barely come to a stop and keep going, but for the most part, yes, I do see people stopping at the one that isn't going up the hill. And
So are you advocating for the stop sign because you'd like to see it as a traffic calming measure or as a more of an intersection safe crossing measure?
For the most part, safety, because I know for a fact that there are several students that walk that way. There are several kids in the area, like I said, and that it is a pretty big safety concern because I've nearly been hit on it, and I've seen other people nearly get hit on it, and it's a fairly big issue.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction because I know that as a rule, staff doesn't like to use stop signs for traffic calming, but we are talking about a safety issue, and you've identified not only yourselves as people who are crossing, but young children who are crossing. What other school is in the neighborhood that they would be walking to, besides Cameron, of course?
There's Cortland Avenue.
Cortland Avenue
the middle
School,
school just down the hill.
Which supports kids who are 11, 12, and 13?
Yeah, it's middle school, so grades 7 and 8.
Okay, that's great. Thanks again for coming in. I hope we can resolve this problem for you.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I too want to compliment you for stepping up to the plate with your concerns, and not only do that, it appears you've done your homework. It's appreciated. I would like, you probably worked hard on that PowerPoint presentation. I would like to have you send it to our staff, and they can circulate it to members of council.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. So that's all the questions. Gentlemen, I too want to thank you for coming in. It's always great to see young people get involved and engaged on an issue. It brings me back to memories of my own from sort of starting to get engaged in politics at a young age. So that's fantastic. Councillor Galloway-Seelock, questions of staff for you? Okay. So that would be all the questions we have for you, and now we'll do questions of staff and see if there's any direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, one question to staff, Mr. Mayor, and then I would like to make some form of recommendation to council on this. The question to staff, perhaps it's a very general question. Can you provide some information on what happened as this issue first came up? And I believe it was at least a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I know that Mr. Carmichael was involved, and perhaps Justin has some information for council.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, an all-way stop warrant was calculated based on a traffic study done on June 11th, 2014. And at that time, an all-way warrant was not met for the roadway classifications. In addition, on January 7th, Ken Carmichael and Transportation Services met with the two students that are the delegation today and talked about some safety concerns related to placing an all-way stop at the top of the crest of the hill. One consideration is that the grade is 5.5 to 7.35%, which is fairly steep for a slope. And then having people safely stop on the downgrade causes potential control issues in winter conditions. And safely moving up the grade from a stop position year-round can be a challenge for vehicles. And there's reduced sight lines regarding traffic coming from over the crest. One recent issue at the provincial level is the new pedestrian crossover legislation. There are relatively high pedestrian counts at this location, so this may be an application of the new pedestrian crossover legislation, which would not be an all-way stop, but would provide a right-of-way to pedestrians crossing at that location. So that's something that staff could investigate further.
Thanks, Mr. Edmund. Could you tell me what part in this procedure, what part plays when a child is injured or if there are accidents in the area? I'm aware of the one accident. Would you look at a history of accidents in this area?
Through the mayor, we always look at a history of accidents in the area, and unfortunately accidents do happen from time to time, so we do try to take that into consideration with our decision-making process.
Okay. Thank you very much. And as I said, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation after questions are completed.
Okay, do you want to just put it on the floor now so people can comment on it at the same time?
Sure. It would be just generally to ask staff to take another look at this issue and consider the possibility of stop signs. I know we've been there before, we've looked at it. We're now having additional requests for something to be done in that area, and so perhaps we could have a written report back from staff with some kind of background and some kind of recommendation that could be followed in order to improve safety in that area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Justin, you talked about the pedestrian crossover legislation and it being new. What's the difference between that and really having a four-way stop? Because all the concerns you had was that the vehicles are going to have to stop and they may not be able to go up the hill, or they may not be able to stop because they're coming down the hill. So what concerns, if they're going to have to stop just because the pedestrian is got the right of way, does that not mean you're going to have the concerns regardless?
Through the mayor, there would be some concern around, people having to stop in those situations, but the frequency of people having to stop would be much less. It would only be when pedestrians are present at the crossing.
I'm just coming at it, would it not be more predictable for vehicles when there's a more consistent regulation there, especially when you're dealing with those extreme environmental conditions with regards to the steepness of the hill?
Through the chair, I think we'd like to look at a number of different solutions and not just go down the stop sign path at this time, because there may be a better solution than an all-way stop, given that it's not warranted at that location.
Okay. And did I hear you correctly by saying there are reduced sightlines there?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
So I thought reduced sightlines was something that was able to warrant a stop sign.
Through the mayor, that is correct in some situations. However, if we look at a pedestrian crossover, they don't necessarily have to be located right at the intersection. They could be located at a different point, which could give a bit more flexibility to improving sightlines for pedestrians.
Okay, I obviously will support a quick comment. I will support Councillor Etherington in having staff look at this again with a quick comment that my concern with regards to this one, I understand the pedestrian crossover legislation. My concern is just with the design of this roadway that we're specifically dealing with, it may be better to have something more consistent there so that vehicles actually understand what they need to do on an ongoing basis versus, oh my gosh, there's a pedestrian, I need to stop. So I think it's something just to have staff look at and bring back to council at a later date.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. So I also would like to support Councillor Etherington's motion. I believe though I would make a friendly amendment if it's not already implied in his motion, that we look at all potential solutions here, not just an additional stop sign. I'm
sorry, just on that,
yeah.
I take that to be implied in terms of what's being requested.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so I'm just, I want to just make a quick comment as well that I think we are very, with the roadway classifications for when a stop sign is warranted and now the new pedestrian crossover legislation, I'd like us to try and give pedestrians more consideration rather than just look at how many vehicles are crossing at an intersection to see if a stop sign is warranted. We do need to prioritize the more vulnerable pedestrians in particular. We do have those two schools that were mentioned, and then we also have a third school, the private school that is servicing the Islamic community. So that's something to consider in addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Vervanevik. Just wondering if there is maybe the possibility of instead of a stop sign, possibly a warning sign, warning drivers that there could be potential pedestrians crossing at the top of the hill so they're more aware of the situation before they get there?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the mayor, we would look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Etherington, you moved your... Councillor Ioannidis?
Oh, is he writing the motion now? Okay, because I wanted to have a little better. I won't be supporting a stop sign, but I mean, because that'd be just contravention of our policy. And I would like to have further investigations on other opportunities if that's part of your recommendation. I don't know. I want to
Well, my understanding, that's what we were looking at. Yeah, and that's fine. I think this is general direction. I don't think we need you to finish writing that out, Councillor Etherington. I think the clerk has understanding of the motion. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Any further discussion? Not. I will support it. I think this is obviously an issue that's of concern, and when you get a group of young people who come forward, and young people tend to sometimes just sort of let things go, and the fact that they've identified this as a source of concern in the neighborhood, I think, signifies even more that it's something we need to take a look at and look at what options might exist to try to remedy the situation. I'd also suggest that we connect with, as part of that, with maybe the neighborhood association, some of the advocates in the neighborhood who sort of know what some of the issues are, and see if they can provide staff with some additional input as well. So all those, Councillor Fernandez?
Just a quick, I know often it doesn't happen that we follow through with delegations like this, but I'm sure that the ward councillor will do that, because I think that's important. This is twice that they've identified this, and I think it's a great lesson in follow through at what happens with processes like this. So that's just a suggestion.
I'm sure he will be doing that, Councillor Fernandez. All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now move on to the tenders. We'll go through the tenders one by one, in case there's any questions. Natural gas and water infrastructure locate service. Any questions on that one? Yes? Okay. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I was going to move the tenders first, if you would like.
Okay.
But then I do have a number of questions.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
On the first one, I'm trying to understand. It says that the unit price remains unchanged, and yet we're providing twice the budget. What's happening there? Because it said that the average annual spend is $390,000, and we're letting the tender go for $767,000. Can somebody?
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start and then perhaps turn it over to Cynthia for additional information. But on page 2 of the report, it does talk about the significant increase of work that we have had in locate services, particularly around the LRT construction, but also with the increased education to homeowners that they have in requesting locates.
So you're expecting the work that we have to do is going to double this year. Is that what you're saying?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the mayor, based on activity for the past 2 years and based on some of the work that's coming in or has been coming in related to the LRT and some other development, this is staff's projection on the volume of work.
Okay, okay. Do we do any of these ourselves, or are they all contracted out?
Through the mayor, we do some locates ourselves. What we're contracting here is additional service or the fluctuation in service requests.
Okay. Now, we can't charge for these, right? We have to do these.
Through the mayor, that is correct.
Yeah. Now, I know that's what the legislation states, but it appears that this year there's a substantial amount of them are for the LRT. Is there no policy, or is there something we can do to pass that bill on to the proper level? I guess this is I will put that question forward. We don't need to know that tonight, but I think it's something I would like to know. One final question, in that we have to do this because we have gas and water lines. What happens in Deer Ridge area where we don't have, or was it Union Gas has the gas lines? Who does the checking there, and who pays for it? Is that part of this? Is that part of this tender, or?
Mr. Chapman?
Through Mr. Chair, Union Gas in that case would be responsible to locate their own infrastructure, and it would not form part of this tender.
So if we have locates out there, do they call Union Gas? They don't call the city.
I believe they would call one call, and then it would be dispatched out. We would still be responsible to locate water service. They would be responsible to locate their own gas infrastructure.
Okay. So we're not paying for their. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Netsky, is your question on this? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Since we already do locates, how many staff people do we have assigned to this?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the mayor, we have 2 staff.
Okay. When I look at the cost of this being $750,000, I think we could be much more wise, penny-wise or dollar-wise, to maybe hire somebody on contract to just specifically do this for $100,000 or something like that, and we can save all this money. Would that be a better alternative? Or 2 people, whatever you need.
Through the mayor, the $750,000 is an upset limit. It's not what we may or may not spend that much. Kitchener Utilities reviews every year any services that they feel they can bring in-house and do a better job in-house or do it more frugally. The workload is unpredictable at this point, so at this point, Kitchener Utilities does not feel it's in our best interest to bring all of this work in-house.
But if you did and doubled your staff, I mean, it'd still be cost savings by half.
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the point is that the work is not uniform through the year, and so what we're hiring is services largely in the spring and the fall that are being fully utilized. If we staffed up to that level, we'd be staffing to the same level as the locating company, but then we'd have to carry that staff through the winter and through the low seasons. So at this point in time, we maintain staffing for a year-round body of work, and we retain a contractor for the peak workloads.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer, but I mean, we have a lot of seasonal workers working, at the golf courses and gardens and stuff like that, and this could be a seasonal thing as well, from March till November or whatever, and just have them on contract for that 9-month period or something.
Mr. Chapman?
Through Mr. Mayor, maybe beyond the scope of the tender. I think the other issue here is that this is not work that lends itself to recruiting any temp. There are requirements for staff to become proficient in reading drawings, to be familiar with the infrastructure, with locating techniques, and so at this point in time, it's been our position that either we train our own staff to do it, or we retain a firm that has specific expertise in this area.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered. Just I want to be clear on the $390,000 figure on the second page. It says the annual spend over the past 2 years. Is that $390,000 per year? Yes? Okay. And again, and with the amount that it's gone up, I'm a little bit unclear then too as to, I know there's been indication that it's a result of more work. Do you have an idea how much more it's costing for the same amount of work? Like, is there an increase in that, or is it exclusively more work?
Mr. Chapman? Oh, Ms. Palmer-Novakovic?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the unit price remains unchanged. So if the work had remained at the same level, then we would have been at the same cost.
Okay, so it's exactly the same. It's purely more work. Okay, great. And sorry, one last question. Is this the same tender that we sent out for tender a second time last year? Just as a result of the LRT work, or no? No? I believe we sent a gas utility locate. No? Okay. I might be misremembering. Thanks.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, that was close. That was the gas utility relocations. So that was the actual construction project.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola, is this for this one or not the next tender? Councillor Marsh, this one or the next tender? Okay, go ahead.
Just a request for future reports. I mean, it's not. It is mentioned in this report. The actual spend will depend on the level of activity throughout the term of the contract, but it's not explicitly clear that the bid price is actually going to have the same unit price as previously, and it's not clear that it's going to be the upper limit, but that we're not necessarily going to be spending this amount. So it just would be great, because I had the same question. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and maybe staff can look at it, but the report does say on page 2 the unit price for locate work remains unchanged from the 2013 tender. So anyway, staff can maybe take a look if the wording can be adjusted. Moving on to the next tender, Fairfield Avenue. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, am I reading this correctly, that this is part of our accelerated infrastructure program that is causing our utility rates to increase? Is this part of it? And what is it about this 2 blocks that cause it to go there? Have there been water main breaks out in this area? How does it get to the top of the list?
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, I guess I'm just, when we're dealing with the tender today, the approval of the list, I believe we dealt with through the budget process. So I think we just need to remember we're staying focused on the tenders today.
All right. I'll back off that. Okay. I do, in that our rates are based on what we have to pay over the next few years. I do have the odd question dealing with that. And on this particular one, I would like to know, I was given a price last week that it costs $5 million a kilometer to do. What is this costing us? I'll help you. They're 280 meters. A kilometer is 1,000 meters. This is costing us $3,900,000,
okay,
which is a far. I'm just.
Councillor Gazzola, if you have a question, we'll ask staff to answer it. If you already know the answer, then I'm not sure what the point is.
Well,
in all due respect,
the point I'm trying to make is that we've planned our rates for the next 20 years based on $5 million a kilometer, and here it is, $3.9 million. I'm just trying to understand it. Where am I going wrong?
Well, staff can maybe provide some clarity, but I would believe that the answer the other day at budget was an average of costs, not any particular road. Mm-hmm. Can anybody help, Councillor Gazzola? Mr. Chapman?
Well, okay, they can come back.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the Mayor, you're correct. That represented an actual average cost. As you know, this tender is under budget. It's been our experience often that tenders early in the construction season sometimes do better than budget. Some will come over later in the year. I also don't know if Councillor Gazzola was referencing this tender alone or the total cost of the project, which would include design, final paving, and those costs are obviously higher than this tender value.
Well, that was the other question. I thought this was part of that program, and I didn't see any budget there for the paving in that. Now, where is that? Is that part of the project?
So through the Mayor, what's not included in this tender is all of the geotechnical work and design work that would have happened previously, and also the final paving that will happen, I believe, the year after construction. So those costs would not be included here.
So there's no paving at this point?
There would be the base coat of asphalt included in this tender, and then the top coat would come in a future phase.
But where's the base coat of asphalt? I don't see an allocation for that here.
It's funded within this project budget.
All the budget money is coming from water, storm, and sanitary. I don't see anything from the city's base budget.
That's because the work is driven by replacement of all of the subsurface infrastructure, which takes up the whole road right-of-way. So as you know, the funding for this program comes from sanitary, storm, and water.
So they're not paying for any of the asphalt?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Galway-Sila.
Yeah, Dan may have answered part of my question in his last response, but I was just looking at the last line before you get to the tender financial piece where it says the estimated surplus will be returned to the ARP general account and be used for unexpected deficits. Obviously, we don't budget for deficits, but do we anticipate many deficits in this account throughout the year, or is it like you had said, it's kind of early in the season, we typically see less, and later in the year, we see higher tender amounts?
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, you're correct. The prices will fluctuate on each tender. I think in response to a request that you've made in previous years, we do track cumulatively what our position is. This is the first one you're rewarding, so we'll do that throughout the year. And I'm sure that we'll see this year some will come in under budget, some will come in over. We'll likely recommend, if it's a modest overage, that we continue with the project, and it's surpluses like these that help us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up is roof rehabilitation fire hall. Any questions? Okay, if not, Waterloo Region District School Board tender. Councillor Gazzola.
Again, I want to ask when we did our budget this year, what did we budget? Did we budget the 1.5%, 2% increase? Do you know offhand? I don't, because we're looking at a 14% reduction here. So I'm just curious, did we take that into account when we did our budget just last week?
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, 14% on this tender would equate to about just under $10,000, I believe. To your question, we held our materials lines flat in the budget, but to achieve their targets, many departments had to take reductions in those lines, so they were not increased. In many cases, there would have been modest reductions applied to those budget lines.
Okay. Next up is parts, Midtown and Rockaway. Any questions? Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, in my discussions with staff over the past year, when we've been exploring the growth of the LRT system and the parts system for the stations that will be located, staff are quite knowledgeable in terms of being able to address issues as to where we're headed. They've had public consultation meetings, etc., with the industry and the public, and I'm surprised that this is coming forward when I thought staff have the capability of doing it themselves. Why are we doing this?
Mr. May? Whoops, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think that this is a question about capability, it's about capacity. If you think about this team and the other work that Council has approved for them to complete, things like the residential infill guidelines, the comprehensive review of our zoning bylaw, the cultural heritage landscapes. There's a very significant workload for this team, and so this is required in order to get this work done.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, and maybe I'm misunderstanding. It says we have a zero balance on this, but when I look at the total budget, it says $255,000 was budgeted, but the cost is $273,401. That looks like a deficit to me, not a zero. Am I not reading these numbers correctly?
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, are you looking at page 3 of the tender report?
Yes, I am.
So you'll note in the second line under estimated costs, there is the HST rebate. So once that's claimed with the projected costs, we will be on budget.
Okay. I don't often see it that way, but all right, I get it. Thanks.
Okay, moving on then to the procurement and management of natural gas supply. Any questions? Councillor Fernandez.
So I looked at, and I know that I'm getting into the weeds here, and that there's been some concern about me doing that in the past, but upon reading the background and the services that this consultant was going to be providing, I had to look at our job descriptions for that department. One of them I looked at, and I asked a number of questions of Mr. Malcolm in advance so that I wasn't coming at this from the wrong side. And I know that Ms. Fletcher has seen my emails as well, and we had a discussion earlier. But I'm concerned that we are paying a consultant to do the work that in Mr. Malcolm's email, he admits that strategic direction, oversight, and business needs are handled under his direction. Additionally, just one of the job descriptions for the manager of asset optimization directly speaks to some of what this consultant is going to do. So instead of turning down a tender, which I know we don't like to do, I'd really like to table this to our finance committee for a further discussion and understanding about the distinct differences between what a consultant is doing here and what our utilities and gas staff is doing under Mr. Malcolm's direction. Again, I understand that this could be some administrative discussion here, but we've had so much conversation over the last number of years, especially since 2014, about our gas rates and what's happening in our utility department. So I know that's not a question, and I apologize for jumping a little bit further. But because I've had back and forth with staff, I thought it would be prudent to go a little bit further.
So the tenders have been moved already. I would have to take a motion to refer it separately when the time comes. But Ms. Fletcher, you have a response to Councillor Fernandez?
Through you, Mayor Urbanovic. I think just a couple of points of clarification. When we were going back and forth and answering some questions, there are a couple of the positions that the council member has asked about. They're actually on the water side of the house. They have nothing to do with the gas service. So that's a point of clarification. I think we have had many discussions about our gas procurement, gas supply. There are in-house staff who do take care of aspects of that, but in order for us to make sure that we're being as responsible on our gas procurement, we tap into industry experts. This is an example of a firm where we could tap into multiple experts and decades worth of experience that augment what some of our staff are doing. It also comes down to what Mr. May just described. In a lot of cases, there are capacity issues. So in order for us to make sure that we're being as responsible with our gas utility, I would encourage council to support us tapping into consulting services.
Councillor Fernandez?
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I would like to maybe make a motion then to have this item referred to our Finance Committee for further discussion.
I'll come back to you on that. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I have a question to do. We're dealing with a consulting services here that we're issuing this proposal for, but included in it is another line says consulting fees for transition. So are we getting a consultant to look at the consultant, or what does that relate to? What is the transition we're talking about?
Mr. Chapman, and then Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, in one case, we are moving from an incumbent to a new vendor. The incumbent has worked with us to develop a lot of knowledge and process, and so there will be a short transition period for that consultant to work with the new vendor to transition that work.
Yeah, I'm not clear. I'm not totally. We're hiring a new consultant here.
We're transitioning from an incumbent to a new vendor. Yes.
And so we need.
It's not reasonable to expect the incumbent pro bono to work with the new vendor to transition that knowledge. So we need to reasonably pay them to work with the new vendor to transition that knowledge that's been developed over the past 2 years.
Okay, and I can appreciate that, but why wouldn't the new vendor have the knowledge? Isn't that part of what we're paying them for?
I think in a general sense, yes, but not specific to our operation. As you know, ours is a fairly unique model in the province, and so there are nuances that are specific to Kitchener Utilities that wouldn't apply elsewhere. The only other comment I'd make with respect to the referral is that in one case, one of the vendors actually provides our settlement services with our gas retailers, and that's a daily ongoing function. If we are without that function, we will be unable to procure and settle our gas transactions. So that's an important one to continue with, given it's an operating function of the utility.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, but it's normally when we change consultants, we don't have to keep our consultants on to train the new consultants, so that's fine.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, this is for the item that Councillor Fernandez is saying that she may want to refer back to staff for the advisory services for procurement and management of natural gas supply. Ms. Fletcher, sorry for catching you off guard on this question, but I'm hoping that in a general ballpark you would know what's the dollar value of procurement of natural gas annually that our utility purchases. Would you know? No? It's okay. My assumption
Mr.
is...
Chapman, I think, is going to take a
lots of
stab
money.
at it.
Yeah. Through the mayor, don't hold me to it. I believe it's north of $30 million a year.
Okay. All right. I was expecting it to be a very large number, but I just wanted to confirm, simply because I'm trying to relate the cost of the consultant in relation to the capacity and the purchasing cost. So the markets can be quite volatile. So having the right type of information at hand can necessarily save our ratepayers significant amount of money as well. Would that be correct to assume?
Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, it is, and I think that's a really important point, that the service that you've referenced is the $48,000 fee. The larger fee is actually for what I was describing previously, which is an operating function of the utility for the settlement of all of our transactions. If we had to bring that in-house, it would cost us far more to staff up that function. So this is not all consulting in the true sense of the word. The small portion is what you've described.
Good, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Netsky.
Yes, thank you. It causes me some interest here to see that the recommendation pertains to two consultants, one that deals with operating and settlement services, and then the other part of the recommendation deals with the advisory and planning services. And when I looked at the next page, there were 5 interested parties who provided interest to bid on this. And did any of those companies bid on both components on it? We seem to be splitting 2 parts of it. Or was there any of them that could have done it all as one package? And I see there's also an American company that's also...
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say off the top of my head, yes, several proponents did propose to utilize both. However, upon evaluation, the stronger proponents, it was to separate it out, including the cost score.
So it was better to... Each one had their strengths or whatever?
Exactly.
Okay, so I know it's not a tender, but it sort of is. They applied for both components, and you just sort of picked and choose where their strengths were, or is that how you approached it?
Well, there was evaluation criteria, and both components were evaluated, and yes, there were individual ones that had their strengths.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Okay. I'll come back at the end when we deal with this one, Councillor Fernandez, for your motion. Emergency generator service. Councillor, no, not on that one. That, I think, is on the tenders.
You're done. If you're ready to take a vote on the tenders.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Just for number 4 for the part study. Initially, I wasn't planning on declaring conflict, but again, even though I'm making a quick comment on this, even though one of our colleagues in a different municipality, through legal advice, has been told LRT is a general good to the entire community, so necessarily conflicts perhaps may not be there. I've continued to keep a higher I guess, standard for myself and continue to make my conflicts known along the LRT project. So based on that part study, if you can please vote on that separately, and I'll declare a conflict on that.
Okay, I will do that. Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may be confused, but I had some comment on number 8. Are we going to consider number 8? Or?
Number 8. We'll get to that under Committee of the Whole. I'm just dealing with the tenders right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will deal with Councillor Fernandez's referral first. Is there a seconder for the referral? Seconded by Councillor Yanetsky. Any discussion? Councillor Fernandez, go ahead.
Well, based on the information that Mr. Chapman gave us, I'm wondering if it's at all possible to split out the two recommendations and to take the Blackstone Energy Services out on its own for expression of interest, because they are two separate prices here, and the actual referral would deal with the award to Edgent Energy Advisors. Is there a possibility of doing that?
Ms. Palmer-Novakovic?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have the opportunity, as they would be separate legal agreements after the fact anyways, to do that. However, I would like to reiterate that we would advise against that.
Okay, then that would be how I would like to refer it then. So if we can separate it out, because it's two separate agreements, I would request a referral of the first part, which is the award to Edgent Energy Advisors of $140,000 plus the HST of $18,252, and then a vote on the expression of interest for Blackstone Energy Services separately.
Well, it's the 48,000 that you want to refer, not the 140,000.
No.
The 140,000, Mr. Chapman indicated, that's the part that's part of the normal course of business and really isn't consulting. It's the 48,000 that's consulting, and that I believe you were questioning whether or not it's a duplication of work being done by our staff. Mr. Chapman, can you clarify?
That's correct.
Okay, so I actually have it reversed then. What I should be saying is that it's the 48.6 that I would like to have referred to a finance committee, and the other amount voted on as an expression of interest.
That's correct.
Okay. So is the clerk clear on that? I'm sorry for...
Councillor Gazzola, on this?
I want to know from staff whether we can do it. Councillor Fernandez wants to defer it for further discussion.
Refer the one part, yes.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering...
Staff have already said that we can, but it's not advised.
Oh, we can...
We can split the two and refer the part that she's asking, but staff have said it's not advised. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, it's just a quick comment. At the end of the day, this council puts a lot of weight on the advice of our staff in dealing with a lot higher numbers than the 48,000. And that's even more significant, especially because we just went through the budget. I think our staff had been diligent in advising us correctly. I would be supportive if you wanted staff to come back with a report, coming back with a rationale for this. Again, or maybe giving more information as to what these services are offered by this consultant, but not to limit what's being asked through this tender. But the way you're framing it, I can't support. But if you're asking for more information for your understanding in case of future tenders like this, I would be supportive of that, but not referring it or deferring it as you're doing right now.
Councillor Fernandez.
So I'd like to see where the vote goes, and then I may have a follow-up motion to this.
Okay. I won't be supporting the motion on the referral. I think once we start getting into details around job descriptions and so on, we're starting to tread into the purview of staff in this area. We're talking about I think staff have given justification for why it's necessary, and fundamentally we're talking about 0.15% or less of our total gas purchases budget, just to put it into some perspective as well. And I think we need to remember what our governance as opposed to operational roles are. So with that, motion to refer, all those in favor? To refer the 48,000. You want a recorded vote, okay? So the motion we're voting on is to proceed with the 140,000 plus HST and to refer the 48,000 plus HST. Just the referral? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion doesn't carry. We'll move on to then the tenders have been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. We'll deal first of all with item number 5 that Councillor Singh has declared a conflict on. Sorry? Okay. Okay. You sounded like you were wanting to raise something. So item number 5, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The balance of the tenders, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Reports of the committees. Councillor Davey, the Audit Committee.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Marsh that the 2 items in the Audit Committee be adopted, and I would point out the email that's in front of you with respect to the changes in number 4.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Oh, sorry, I'm just jumping a little bit too ahead. I'm just waiting for committee.
Okay. Okay, so that has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Unfinished business. New business. Councillor Yanetsky. Can you click in, please? Thank you. Oh, you just came on now. Go ahead.
Thank you. I bring before you a motion that I wish to introduce pertaining to outdoor open-air burning. And this has been an issue that was considered by council back 3 years ago on these backyard fires. And at that time, it was supported with a number of regulations and restrictions. And since that time, we have, as council, received emails and phone calls, and I know I've received a whole bunch as well from my residents. And basically, the complaints and concerns come during the better months of the year, and come winter time it's sort of a little lull. But anyways, there are concerns that have been coming forward, and now that we have a new council, I thought it was appropriate to bring forward this motion. Did you want me to read all through this? But that's.
I think it's in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, and just for the general public, basically it's the issue that was discussed 3 years ago on open-air burning, and it's just being brought back again for further review that I want staff to look at what's happened over the past 3 years in terms of issues pertaining to complaints, enforcements, fire responses, any matters that relate to it, and have staff report back to the committee for council review on May the 2nd later this year at the Community Infrastructure Services Committee.
Okay, is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Fernandez. Okay, discussion, Councillor Singh, or questions of staff?
More questions of staff. I understand, where Councillor Yanetsky may have, or the rationale why he may have brought this forward. Again, my concern is we went through this exercise not too long ago Typically, when changes are made to our bylaws, is this really sufficient time for us to have collected enough data to realize the changes that were brought forward through the last amendment, if they have been as fruitful? Again, I'm seeing this was done last 2013, so we have 2 full years of really data collection. Just comment from staff on that.
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, given the amount of work and effort required to conduct this kind of a thorough review, staff don't see the need to do it at this time. We've looked at the numbers. If you look, while the numbers of complaints that both fire and bylaw receive on this issue fluctuate year to year, if you look at a 5-year or 3-year average, last year we were below both of those. So we don't believe that it's necessary at this time.
And with some of the controls that were brought in with the change, as well as some perhaps additional measures as well since then, do residents have greater capacity to limit or ask for prohibition of their neighbors' activity with backyard fires if it's causing health harm, or of course if there's irresponsible conduct?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, since Council approved the changes to the bylaw, we really have not seen a substantial increase in general complaints. What I can tell you is one of the changes that was added in back in 2013 was to allow residents who believe that a neighbor's backyard fire is causing them health issues to lodge a formal complaint using that as the rationale for us to lay a charge. And since 2013, we've had 0 people actually take up that part of the bylaw.
But that measure is there for the benefit of our residents. Yes. How exhaustive of exercise was it for us to do, or that we undertook last time to get our residents' perspective on this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say it was an exhaustive review. For those members of council who were on council at that time, you recall that we received a very large amount of public feedback through this process. Council will know that we are short-staffed on the management team within the bylaw division, and the business plan, which you just approved on final budget day, had a number of other priorities. And so if it's council's wish for us to open up this bylaw again and review it, I would be looking for direction on what other items you would prefer we defer to make this a priority.
So part of my concern is to lose some of the capacity that we have to control and the mitigating measures that we implemented. Because from what I remember, again, some time has passed, but the community was pretty split on this one, was it not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's fair to say that, yes, we received a whole lot of public input when we last reviewed this bylaw, and it was a very divisive bylaw in terms of what we heard. And so councillors may recall that what we tried to do was strike a balance between what we've heard. And based on the fact that we have not seen complaints increase substantially since that time, I think we've struck the right balance.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing is we posed this question to the community where it came back with a bit of a conflicting response. Again, from memory, I remember I had seen close to almost a balanced reply, 2,000 or so more, 2,000 or so against, and then council had put additional measures, regardless of it, to limit and of course deter irresponsible usage. At this point, you said we haven't had a lot of complaints come forward either. What additional information could staff bring forward that we haven't seen through the review back in 2013, and again, absent of the complaints that we haven't heard either? Like, what could staff really bring back other than opening this up all over again and going back to the community? Is there even information that's available?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I can tell you that if we were to bring back a report on this issue, having spoken to both bylaw staff and staff within the fire department, staff would be recommending no changes to the current bylaw.
Okay, all right. So it would be fairly small report coming back. I would have some comments. I've struggled with this for a while, but I would have some comments depending on the way the questioning goes. I may have some more questions of staff.
Well, if you have a comment, just make it now. I think we know what the motion is, so.
Thank you. I was going to wait my turn, but my comment is, initially I think I made my opinion known that having backyard fires in inside of our suburbs sometimes can be challenging to control that. I had gone with back in 2013 with a compromise approach of still continuing to allow, having heard overwhelming response from our citizens who did want to keep it, but again with the additional measures. So my opinion hasn't changed, but at the same time I want to be reflective on that public consultation that we had already heard. And at this point, although I may want to see a change in this in the future years, I think we have to allow the process to take its course for a little longer, and then perhaps a reflection thereafter. So based on that, I think it's a little early from what I'm hearing from staff that their opinion is going to be no different, no change. I don't know where we would go from there other than going back to the community for the same question, where I'm sure we'll get a similar response back, where the community would be divided unless somebody wanted to put this as a referendum. That's the only way to get a clear answer from the community. But I think through a review or beyond this at this point is not going to solve anything unless someone has a firm approach as to saying all right ban or leaving status quo. But this review is not accomplishing much.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just say that I'm puzzled by this sudden motion. I received a few complaints leading up to our current bylaw, and just one or two that I can recall after our changes and amendments. I don't think it's worth another review, even though I remain opposed to open fires in the city. I'm satisfied with what we've managed to achieve with the bylaw that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Etherington. Councillor Davey.
And thank you. Comments is okay at this point?
Yep.
Okay. I think the important thing to remember here is we literally feels like we just dealt with this issue not long ago, and it was also a divisive issue. So I'm very leery about dredging things up that I think can cause the community more harm than good, when I don't think there'll be any material benefit in the outcome. If someone has health issues, we can stop the fires from happening around them. It's very clear in our current bylaw. If someone they can't enjoy their property because someone around them is having a fire, we can stop them in our current bylaw. There are plenty of items that are already in our work plan that, to be frank, I think are more important at this point in time, and that staff has to get to. I think the issues that we're facing here is there are some segments in small areas of the city where people want to have a fire, and if you do it responsibly and you're not bothering your neighbors, then no one's going to say anything and you can do it. And that's how the system works now. If people aren't complaining, if people don't have an issue with it, then I don't understand why it's before us.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Vivanovic. I wasn't on council when this bylaw was created. Just wondering, ask of staff, have fire raised any issues since this new bylaw has come into effect?
Mr. Bay.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this issue was actually dealt with at the first council meeting that I attended in this role, and so my memory may be a bit foggy, but what I do remember is that I think it's fair to say that fire back in 2013 had raised some concerns around this issue. I consulted with fire staff today, and it's fair to say that they are quite satisfied that the balance that was struck in 2013 is working, and that's a balance between public safety and the issue of bylaw and nuisances, as well as people enjoying their backyards.
Okay, and one more question. As we develop our neighborhood strategy, has the idea of an outdoor fire, has that been one of the tips or suggestions for helping to build neighborhoods? And
So through you, Mr. Chair, it's interesting. I often say to people that my objective in the neighborhood strategy is to move people from their backyards to their front porches. And I actually have had a couple of people challenge me on that to say that actually having a barbecue or some time in the backyard with a neighbor is the best way to build neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Yanetsky?
Yeah, I was wanting to hear comments from my colleagues here around the Horseshoe on this, and I appreciate some of the opinions. I'm a little disappointed in the response from staff. I understand where staff is coming from. I had met with staff back last fall with the enforcement staff to review this matter and discussed it, and they indicated there were some issues, etc., and they were dealing with them. And but I had indicated that we still got complaints, and that this matter is now before a new council, although the majority of it is from the previous term. That it was appropriate, and the residents who approached me says we've got to bring it on the table. They even approached that before in the original council, but we couldn't introduce it unless you got 2/3 majority to bring it back on the table for reconsideration, and I wasn't prepared to do that at that time. But now that we have a new council, I was prepared to bring it forward. I know staff said that they don't think there's issues. I want to see statistics. I want to see information. I want to see public input into this because public still are interested. You may feel that you're not getting as many complaints. Well, maybe people just don't want to bother anymore because now they're stuck with this fire regulations, and they're just sort of putting up with it. But if we introduce it, then they'll come out and speak to it, as I would see it. So I implore that you consider this. I know we have a new fire chief from the previous one that we had at the time that was providing his opinion, and I think fire departments do work together, but there's also a matter of opinion that each chief may have versus the other one. So my discussions with staff to bring it forward to May the 2nd was a consideration timetable to give them some ample time to bring forward a report and consider it before we start into the next spring, summer, fall season in 2016, and have further complaints as we come into the summer months. So I look forward to your support for just consideration by staff and coming back with a report with the details and public input.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Barry. I have a couple questions to staff. During our business plan, if I can recall correctly, wasn't fire pits one of the options? Was that one of the options at all put forward?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're referring to the prioritization exercise for the strategic plan, I don't recall that being an item, but I may be mistaken.
Okay, because I think it was there. I remember it, and obviously at that time, which was less than a year ago, it was obviously not merited as a concern. Also, the other what I'm looking at is if we were to go through this public consultation again, like what we just did 2 years ago. How much on a ballpark figure would that cost?
Through you, Mr. Chair, given how divisive this issue is, you would certainly want to have a comprehensive community engagement process, and so I'd be more concerned about the amount of staff hours put into it, both from bylaw management standpoint and from communications and marketing staff. But certainly there would be some, maybe $2,000 or $3,000 for promotions, that kind of thing.
Okay, so there would, for the significant staff time, you haven't really quantified how much that would be.
Through you, Mr. Chair, from what I recall of the 2013 review, this issue took on a life of its own when it came to public input, and the amount of hours that staff had to put into it were far beyond anything that we would have planned, and I suspect the same would happen again.
Okay. Can I make my comments?
Yep, please do.
Given that basically the information from staff that no material
differences, except maybe a little less and lesser complaints. And based on the cost, and I don't think this would be an efficient use of staff's time or city resources at this point. And also considering it was part of our business, it was one of the options in our business plan, and no one seemed, it didn't even put in, it wasn't even a high priority at that time. So given all that, I can't support this recommendation.
Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, just a question to Mr. May. Would it be, we have an opportunity again to look at our business plan next year. We do it annually. If I was to make a friendly amendment to Councillor Yanetsky's motion for spring of 2017, and it gets put on our business plan, do you see that then it would be a viable opportunity to do this?
So just a correction before you answer that, Mr. May. The business plan that's been approved guides staff, and Mr. Wilmer can correct me on this, guides staff for the full 4 years of council. It's not, we get updates on a regular basis, but we don't regularly go and change it.
You're right. We do get updates.
Mr. Wilmer?
Through the Mayor, so it's through that update process that Council can establish new priorities for the coming year. If it really is the majority of Council want to see this in 2017, you could achieve that through your response to us on the update at the end of 2016.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oh, sorry, click back in. I thought you were done. Go ahead, sorry.
I apologize. So anything you decide tonight really doesn't affect or influence that at all, unless it's just to remind us to put it on the list for you to consider at the end of the year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may add to Mr. Wilmer's comments, my only comment would be we would again be looking for what do you want us to defer, because there are some, I think of the chicken bylaw, the neighborhood property standards, like there are a number of high profile reviews that council has already directed staff, and so we would say back to you, which one do you want to defer, because this is a higher priority.
And I recognize that, but I think that the update is an opportunity for us to understand how far staff has gotten on certain priorities, and maybe at that time something will have opened up, or we will be further ahead on some of those priorities. So I guess that would be my friendly amendment to Councillor Yanetsky, is that when we get the updates from staff on our business plan, that we are offered that opportunity to see if we can bring this forward in a staff report for 2017. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not sure that's, first of all, we don't take friendly amendments, and I think that's in some senses contrary to the motion that Councillor Yanetsky has brought forward.
Well,
so if that motion doesn't succeed, then there may be an opportunity to bring another motion forward. Councillor Singh?
Again, my understanding is that when we're receiving that update, depending on where we are on our business plan, we have an avenue at that point to bring this discussion to the table. I don't think we have to have a general motion directing us for a future discussion that we have a capacity to bring forward at that point on our own. So I just don't understand what the purpose of that motion would be. There's nothing limiting Councillor Yanetsky, yourself, or I to bring this issue back and discuss and see if that could be part of the business case. So
okay, and that's a valid point. Certainly, let's see how Councillor Yanetsky's motion gets.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. So point of clarification. I don't understand that. My understanding would be that if this fails, we wouldn't be able to revisit it for this term. Is that not correct? No. My point is, I don't really want to be talking about this for the next 3 years on council. So how do I?
I would share that sentiment.
How do I effectively?
The motion as it's worded now, I would argue, in fact, that if we do not support it, then there would not be an opportunity to bring back that staff review the issue this term.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I haven't commented on this, but and I'm not sure where I should be going on it. We have had 3 years, 3 smoke seasons since we last passed this. It would be nice to see, I won't go as far as Councillor Yanetsky is going here, but it would be nice to see a small report come back from staff. They've mentioned a lot of things tonight. A report, just not a full-fledged report, just an update as to where we stand with this whole issue. I think it's a legitimate request. There have been a number of constituents that are still concerned with this. When it was back here in 2013, there were 2 or 3 members of council, including myself, that didn't support the direction we're taking. And of course, people know that, and so they direct their inquiries to us. I think it's a legitimate question. I'm not asking for full-fledged public engagement, but it would be nice to have, after 3 seasons, have an update as to what has transpired in those 3 years. So I gather then if I'm at odds as to do I support this resolution, or it would have been nice if staff could say, well, we can bring you back some information. I mean, at this point, staff are saying our opinion's the same. No need to change.
Well, I think, Councillor Gazzola, what staff are saying is that they've done a quick look at this, and based on their experience, and staff can correct me if what I'm saying is not what we heard earlier, but their experience has suggested that there hasn't been a problem, and that in fact the compromise motion that was approved by the former council is in fact working. Is that a fair?
I guess I'm
hold on, Councillor Gazzola, I have the floor. Is that in fact a correct reflection, Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. And to be clear, staff would not, of our own volition, launch another review of any level on this bylaw. And so it will require council to provide direction to do that.
Councillor Gazzola? You still have the floor.
It's amazing the way more decisions are made here between staff and a few members of council as opposed to council. I was just asking...
In fairness, Councillor Gazzola, I think staff are answering the questions that you or other members of council asked. So please continue.
I'm asking for there seems to be a lot of information that staff have already looked at in dealing with this issue, and I'm asking for them to share in a little more detail a brief update to all of council as to what's occurred over the last 2 or 3 years.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh?
I just want to, actually I was going in the same direction as Councillor Gazzola. I mean, I appreciate Councillor Yanetsky's concern about residents who complain about the backyard fires that do bother them, but my goodness, we have dedicated staff on a seasonal basis every single weekend that we have warm weather. And my understanding from conversation that I had since seeing this motion with bylaw staff, I learned what I think could easily be shared with all of council in a simple update. I don't know, maybe staff, if Mr. May could comment on this. I think that what is being asked here is not any kind of a review, but just a simple update with some information that would be readily available to staff and in a quick update. Is that a possibility that we could get that to council in an email?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff are more than happy to provide some level of detail through an email. To be clear, what I'm responding to is the motion before you that Councillor Yanetsky has put forward, which it goes far beyond that.
What I thought you were responding, what I thought was being commented on was Councillor Gazzola's request for just an update, and I think that's something that I would like to request as well. And I can't support this motion on the table because I think, well, for all the reasons already stated. Thank you.
Councillor Yanetsky?
Well,
you have one final word, but then we need to
I
bring
understand.
it to a close.
I see I'm in based on the comments received, responses from staff, members around the horseshoe, put into a dilemma as to which way to go. I mean, there's a friendly amendment. There's a request for maybe just a staff report, but maybe to put it on the table for next year. Do we vote on this now? Do I maybe modify it to change the date from May of 2016 to 2017, or do I just maybe withdraw the whole thing and then just bring it forward and when we update the business plan next year? I mean, I'm not too sure right now, based on the responses, which way to go. If we vote on this, I mean, as the mayor pointed out, and that if it gets defeated, well, that's it for this year, or that's it for this term, for council, for consideration to even talk about the topic. And I think the residents will be really, really upset that this has just died here on the table with no input from anybody and just been turned down. So I'm really struggling this very second as to which way to turn and what to do about it. And I know time is of the essence. You want to deal with the matter now, but we've heard 4 different directions which way to go, and some of it will die, some of it won't be supported, and I'm not too sure what to do.
Mr. Wilmer?
Through the mayor, if I may make a suggestion then, that we've heard wording such as simple update and just the numbers from council. So one of the options that's available to you, if you want to direct staff to provide a simple update, and I use wording from the second last clause of Councillor Yunetsky's notice of motion, the number of complaints received, enforcement actions, and fines levied. That seems to me maybe something that council can support. It's up to you, Councillor Yunetsky, as to whether you want to get a vote on the first part of that, reviewing the issue of backyard fires with input from the general public. You know what the outcome would be. If that fails, that's it for the term, or you can withdraw it.
So based on those comments, Mr. Wilmer, I guess the balancing factor is the input from the public. If we don't have that, but just have a response from staff in terms of, well, here's all the stats, this is where everything stands, and present it to us, is this just a report coming from staff to us just for your information only, or will there be some type of recommendation?
Through the mayor, it is for your information only. It's for information. I think you heard Mr. May say this has been to the public. The public is divided. The council of the day heard from the public and made a decision to balance the interests of the public. Based on our experience since in the 3 years, nothing significant has changed. There's no real reason to reopen it. So if you want to get the numbers, we can provide the numbers.
Okay, and I'm going to interject here. Madam Clerk, if you can just remind me, because once a motion has been moved and seconded, it actually belongs to the council now. And so it can't be withdrawn from the floor by the mover and seconder. It belongs to, unless council itself withdraws it. Is that correct?
I believe you are correct, yes.
Okay. If Madam Clerk can confirm that for me. Because, no offense, Mr. Wilmer, I'd referred it to the clerk.
You're looking at me, so I am.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Hold on.
that is correct.
Hold on. Wait. Okay, you are on. Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Gazzola. Okay, Councillor Gazzola, you've already spoken to this motion, and it's been Councillor Etherington has actually called it to question. So we are going to take a vote on the motion that's on the floor right now. All those in favor? Recorded vote? Okay. So the motion as moved and seconded as presented by Councillor Yunetsky. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Fails, sorry. Thank you. Okay. We'll move on then to Councillor Fernandez. You have an item of new business? Or you're waiting until...
No, I'm not jumping in advance. Since that failed, are we allowed to bring the portion that Mr. Wilmer suggested forward?
I think that's a reasonable update, and staff have already indicated they're willing to send that to us in an email.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly provide an informational email to council in the next few days.
Okay.
Well, staff have already covered that, so...
Okay.
Councillor Gazzola? Item of new business?
The next item on the agenda is Regional Council update. When that's given, I have a question or two about that.
Okay.
So that's the next.
Okay.
That's the next. We're not at questions and answers yet.
We are not at questions and answers yet. So regional update. Council is familiar that Regional Council has recently passed their budget, and that has been completed. I can also tell you that the regional committee dealing with the project for the multimodal transit facility continues to meet and will be bringing a public report to regional council, committee and council, probably in the next month and a half to 2 months. And that will obviously be of interest to, no doubt, Councillor Marsh, but all of us, because it will be a significant development to regional, or to all of us as City Council, as well as the region. So those are the main things that I wanted to just bring up to date now. Councillor Gazzola, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, and it deals with the LRT, and it's my question deals with the area that I represent, and I'm sure we've got problems across the city, but I'm constantly being questioned and consulted from constituents, commercial constituents who have businesses in the ward that I represent. Specifically now, I'm talking about a small mall on Cortlandt Avenue that as a result of these most recent changes, most recent events, the mall is basically out of business for the next 6 months. And I'd really like to know what the region is doing about this. What can this council do about this? I know I really believe when I hear from commercial people that there hasn't been a great deal of consideration in dealing with this issue. In that particular example that I'm dealing with, the contractor has detour routes up and signage on how to get people around an area, but there's nothing to help. How do we get people to those businesses? We're going to have a nice LRT, but half of our small businesses are going to have gone bankrupt. So surely there is something that can be done to assist our businesses. I was at a conference earlier, back in December, dealing with public engagement. That good old topic, public engagement. And there was several cases that were brought forward dealing with similar type issues with the City of Toronto, with large contracts of that case, where the contractor and the city worked very closely with the commercial enterprises to assist them in every way they could to keep business open as much as possible. This isn't happening with this LRT. So my question simply is, what can the region do? What can this council do to help these businesses?
Well, Councillor Gazzola, I guess I'll try to answer the question partially. I think you've been on some of the same correspondence that I have. I think it's not accurate to say that the region's not working with business and small business, and that Grand Link isn't working with people, because the reality is they are. Without a doubt, there are some hardships that come with the project, and there are some people that would certainly like to see more happening or something different happen in terms of the project. I also think that there are pros and cons that come with the design-build model that the region undertook in terms of the construction of the LRT. But that was a direction that was decided by the previous council, and some of the advantages are cost certainty and so on, but it also has some challenges around the order of construction and so on. I think, number one, and as I understand it, there has been a meeting with regional staff with these mall owners, and they're looking at solutions. I haven't seen anything in terms of how that's been resolved or how it might be resolved. I don't know if staff have heard anything, and I'll turn to them in a moment. I also know that by working with the regional communication people assigned to this project, as well as the ones that are assigned from Grand Link, some improvements around signage and so on can be achieved, and that's something that again, I believe has been conveyed in one of the messages to you. So I'm not sure where that's at, but that's what I'm aware of. I don't know if staff have any updates or anything more that they can offer on this particular issue. Mr. Aguirre?
I don't have any, through you, Mayor Vrbanovich, I don't have any personal information on that, but I can endeavor to check into it through the region's engagement manager on this project, Kate Moser.
Okay, we also have a person dedicated to liaising with the region on that. Is this something that they can take on? Justin?
Through the mayor, that's correct. We do have an LRT coordinator position at the city, and that's part of their responsibility, is dialoguing on these types of issues.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola?
Well, I would urge, we have 5 representatives on regional council. I would urge them to do everything possible to help our small businesses. You know, the reality is, and that term is thrown out, the reality is that a lot of these firms are struggling. And when you have a mall that's closed off and people are going miles away, it's tough to stay in business. So what I'm asking for, I'd like to see our staff do whatever they can. I'm not saying there's been no communication, but the communication is not up to what it needs to be. So I would urge you to raise the issue at regional council, at the next regional council meeting, and to remind them and ask them to do whatever they could.
I will raise it again in terms of this particular area on your behalf. Councillor Etherington.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Councillor Gazzola. I too have been receiving complaints, particularly all the way along Charles Street, and some of them recently have been new complaints. And the request I've been hearing is how they go about making claims on business losses, huge business losses, against the region. In fact, the people talking to me are saying they're going to come after the city for that, and I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute, it's the region you need to contact. And I've been trying to educate a few of the complainants about how they can go about that. So I've watched the region attempting to do education on routes and the kind of closures that Councillor Gazzola is talking about. it doesn't help the people who are suffering. But one thing I think the region should do is make it better known how these claims, I presume they're insurance business claims, can be made against the region, because people just don't know.
Okay, and that information, I believe, is on the website, I think. But I can double check on that and get back to Council. But I do want to remind Council that the history of businesses making claims against municipalities for projects that are for the community benefit and that ultimately benefit them in the fullness of time has generally not been favorable for those making those applications. And I guess the other part that I would remind this council, that regional council would probably remind us of, that the first phases of the work that is being undertaken for this regional project involves our infrastructure. So I think you can sort of tell where that might go depending on how things evolve in the future. Okay, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic. The one part I really agree with Councillor Guzzola on is signs that would direct potential customers to existing businesses. There are the signs that show you how to get around, but how to get to a business that is affected by construction, I think that would be a good thing for the region to invest in.
Okay, I will raise that issue again. I'll point out that the region has been reluctant to mention specific businesses for fear of people complaining why is one mentioned and not the other. There's literally hundreds of businesses along the entire LRT route, and you know where it has happened has been in the downtown, and it's because of work that the downtown BIA has done, and that doesn't exist. So I don't know if that's something that our economic development folks can look at in the context of where there isn't a BIA. Is there a role for us to play on that? I don't know. Councillor Yanetsky.
Just to follow up on Councillor Gazzola's concern on Cortlandt Avenue, and I've traveled that quite frequently, and I really hate going through there because it is really a bottleneck. And I know the plaza there at Shelley Drive is suffering, and getting into that is extremely difficult at the time when the construction is happening and down to 2 lanes. But now that the portion of Cortlandt is going to be closed, and I can understand, yeah, we need more signage, etc. And people who live nearby can walk over there and do their purchases, get their services, whatever they have to do. But anybody who needs to drive to there is really screwed because you can't get through. Now, if you do still want to do there, where are you going to park?
Councillor Yanetsky, we might be a little careful on the language we use in the council chamber.
Well, they are going to be shafted, because where else are they going to park? They want to go provide the service, do buy a product or go receive it, but they got nowhere to go, and so they're not going to support it and go elsewhere. So I see the challenge of trying to solve the problem, and hopefully the region can come up with some temporary parking for nearby for those businesses.
Okay, well, we heard that staff is going to take this back through our liaison and dialogue with the staff at the region. I know I've certainly asked some questions already about that particular plaza, and I'll ask some more after this evening. Councillor Marsh.
Just to add, with my experience in the downtown core with a lot of businesses requiring wayfinding signs, my understanding is that the region has claimed and is dedicated to making sure that access to businesses will remain open. And so if there's one section of road closed, then really one of the solutions that I think we're seeking here and that I think the region would be very open to doing is, from my experience, is to create wayfinding signs to the mall, not necessarily one business in particular, but to the mall. If there needs to be a detour, it is something that's concerning to me as well. That we need to be very very cautious about ensuring that businesses are accessible. And but my experience is that that's part of the plan. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, Councillor Gazzola?
Are we on questions and answers?
I thought we just were through questions
Well,
and
that
answers,
was-
but if
no,
you have another
that
one,
was-
go ahead.
That was regional council update.
Okay, go ahead.
On questions and answers, I was surprised the other day to read in the newspaper that there was a meeting held at Kitchener City Hall somewhere with the mayor and committee chairs or something, discussing the future of the city or whatever with our local MPs. Was that official city business?
Yeah, it's part of our ongoing advocacy with different MPs. We met with the 3 MPs that are in the governing party, and we'll be meeting with the MP from the 4th riding who's in the opposition party to bring them up to speed on all of our advocacy issues that we're working on as a municipality.
Yeah, but on what legislative authority do you have these kind of meetings without inviting all members of council, or at least notifying all members of council?
But Councillor Gazzola, we do advocacy on a regular basis with members of provincial parliament, members of parliament, ministers. I do them. I extended the invitation to the committee chairs in order to brief them on issues of infrastructure and so on. It's part of, quite frankly, all of our role. And as you're aware, if we involved all members of council, it would then become a official meeting of council.
Well, you can't carry on an operation of a municipality where you have different groups of councillors, you have an in-group and an out-group and whatnot. It's ridiculous that I should have to read about that in the newspaper and not have had any notice of it. And I'd like to ask our solicitor, I mean, we don't have a board of control in this city. We have one council, a mayor and council. Now, is it proper for these kind of meetings to go on without notification to everyone?
I'm not sure. Ms. McDonald?
I'm not sure how to answer that question, to be honest. I'd have to do some research and decide whether that's something that should be discussed with council and caucus.
Well, I don't know that it needs to be discussed.
Councillor Gazzola, you're fully aware that we have done advocacy with members of provincial parliament, members of parliament, government officials on a regular basis. That's part of our role. And I will secondly remind you that the committee chairs are duly elected by this, by council in their roles, and it's not uncommon for them to be engaged in those kinds of issues, or quite frankly, from time to time, to represent me at a meeting if I can't attend.
Advocacy is one thing. This is different where you're having meetings.
It was an advocacy meeting, Councillor Gazzola. Okay.
Well, I expect an answer from our city solicitor on this issue.
Okay.
If I have to, we'll carry it forward to other areas.
Okay, Councillor Yanetsky.
Different topic.
Okay, let's go on. Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Sorry, I want to stay on that topic.
Oh, okay. I'm introducing a new one. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to, having attended that meeting, everything that was talked about in that meeting was with regards to city business that's already been approved by council. So we talked about our strategic plan, we talked about our economic development plan. So really it was an opportunity to brief 3 new members of parliament on what's going on in our city and all the excitement that's here. So I don't think there's anything outside of what's already been approved by council that was discussed at that meeting. And so I was just trying to help them, bring them up to speed, because they are all new in the position that they currently hold.
Councillor Davey?
Yes, that's precisely the point I was going to make there. It was entirely an advocacy effort with respect to the items that we've been facing, such as our water and sewer infrastructure. And Councillor Gazzola, frankly, you realize that we can't have more than 6 members of council meeting, because then it becomes a public meeting of council. This is something that should be applauded, not something that should be criticized.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm perfectly satisfied with a situation where you and the committee chairs met with people from higher levels of government to advocate on our behalf. I have no problem with that. I was reading the same story. I was glad to see that it was not just the mayor meeting with those people, that it had widened out to include the committee chairs. I have no problem with that at all.
Councillor Fernandez?
I think the wise thing, maybe what could have been done, is if the rest of council had been apprised of that before it hit the newspapers. I think sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable when we hear about something like this through the media, and maybe just a short, brief email to all of council apprising us of the meetings and what the outcomes were, if there were any outcomes. That may have just smoothed the waters a little bit.
Okay, that's fine. We can take that under advisement, but I guess the other point I would make is then I think similarly if other members of council are having meetings on issues, then that should be shared with the rest of council as well. Councillor Etherington?
That's just what I was going to say, Mr. Mayor. And in fact, there have been instances in the last few weeks where Councillor Gazzola was obviously talking to the media about our budget and about what he intended to do. We didn't know about that.
I wasn't going to go there, but that is, unfortunately, neither staff nor the rest of council were aware that his emails were being shared with the media ahead of time. Anyway, moving on. Somebody want to move the bylaws? Councillor Yanetsky, go ahead.
Questions and answers, basically, a totally new topic. In my ward, I've received complaints in regards to paid parking at medical offices, health offices, clinics, and we've been dealing with the objectors, myself and staff, on trying to resolve whether this is legal or not. So I'm throwing the position or the questions to staff to investigate and come back with some answers as to whether businesses that are required under zoning to provide required parking for their particular use, whether they are allowed to charge parking to the public where everybody else gets free parking when they go to do businesses. So, and I'm checking the zoning on this and touch base with staff, and we're in a dilemma as to what the regular or the required way of handling it. So I'm requesting that question be answered and brought back in the future. And I also have a second question as well.
Through the mayor, staff will look into that and get back to you by email.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on then to Councillor Yanetsky. Go ahead.
Another totally different topic. Complaints I've received also from staff, not from staff, from residents, and I've touched base with staff, and again, they're in a dilemma as to what can we do about it, and their hands are not tied, but there's no regulations. And this is in regards to the recent change by the Waterloo Regional Record or Metroland in terms of when they deliver newspapers to homes. They have always provided it to the home and always had those flyers and attachments that came in part of it on Thursdays. For whatever reason they have chosen, now they are delivering them separately. People are still getting their newspapers, etc., but now they're getting the flyers packaged up in a little blue package for weather protection purposes, which is fine. and whoever delivers them throws them out the window of the car window or van window, and they're at the bottom of the sidewalk on the driveways. And a lot of these people don't want them. They find it's littering by the distributor, and they have signs on their properties or by the windows saying no junk mail, no whatever, and yet they still keep getting them and wondering what type of enforcement can be done. So-called littering, they said, can we be charged under that? I touched base with staff. There's nothing under there. So I'm asking that to be investigated and report back in terms of what could be done to this. Now, I get my newspaper delivered by the record to my home. Actually, just they put it under the veranda, and I have no problem there. But the flyers, they're all at the bottom of the driveway. In fact, sometimes if they don't throw them far enough, the snowplow comes along and collects a whole bunch of them as they shovel the street. So I'm looking for staff response on that in terms of what could be done.
And I'll turn over to Mr. May, but I will say that this has been an issue in some neighborhoods, and I think a simple call by the ward councillor or someone to the distributor will have them speak to the delivery person, and the problem gets rectified.
Have done that. No action.
Okay, Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not quite sure what Councillor Yanetsky is asking, and so it's hard for me to quantify the scope of the amount of work that would be required of our bylaw staff.
I think what he's asking is he's trying to say is there some mechanism where if this isn't getting dealt with, our bylaw staff can, under the no littering provision, deal with this issue?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I can certainly look into that and have bylaw staff provide Councillor Yanetsky with an email. If I'm understanding correctly, you've already spoken to bylaw staff? So then I'm unclear as to what it is exactly Councillor Yanetsky is asking us to do now.
Councillor Yanetsky?
Well, I'm not. I don't know what I want you to do, because I'm getting complaints because there's littering happening on the street and the sidewalks and the driveways, and people don't want those flyers. Yet they contact the record, they contact Metroland, and they say, yeah, okay, we'll look into it, and nothing happens. The following week and the following weeks, it just keeps coming. This has been going on since November when this all changed, and I've gotten those complaints, and I've talked to them, and you just get nowhere. So I don't know. I'm throwing it out to staff to see how can we resolve this. I don't know what the answer is.
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I can meet or speak to Councillor Yanetsky offline, and I would say that this is a perfect example of why I would appreciate, and I think staff would appreciate, when we have questions like this, advance notice. I could have likely given you an educated answer this evening had I had notice of this, but having said that, I think we can talk offline and see what options there are.
Good. Well, good point. But I think that's staff's point is, we didn't go to the point of changing our rules of procedure that you have to get questions in by the Friday before to allow people to ask something that is time sensitive. This sounds like the kind of question that, quite frankly, could have been shared with senior management ahead of time, and they could have got you an answer, or a better quality answer, for this council meeting, as opposed to having it come back. So I think that requires a level of discipline on the part of all members of council going forward. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, come on, get real. People have a responsibility. If they get a newspaper, if they get flyers thrown on, they're lucky to have houses big enough that they're thrown at their house. But if they do, get on the phone to the record and do something about it. This is a city council. What are we going to do? I mean, where do we go from phoning the newspaper to... Give me a break.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Etherington. I'm moving on now. We're done with questions and answers. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Davey, that leave be given a mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to Committee of the Whole. There are no late starters. All those, Councillor Gazzola, on the bylaws? Okay, go ahead.
It's a simple question. One of the bylaws deals with borrowing for current expenditures in 2016. Is that for current expenditures or for capital expenditures, or is that dealing with a line of credit?
Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's for the latter. It's never been accessed. It's permitted under the Municipal Act and a requirement of the bank that we pass it.
Thank you.
So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Fernandez that committee resolve itself into committee of the whole. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Fernandez.
Okay. Thank you. All the tenders have been passed. So we're on to number 2, Water Regional Small Business Centre, Province of Ontario. Councillor Davey moves that. Any questions? All those in favour? And that passes. Number 3, the Waterloo Regional Small Business Centre, Province of Ontario Agreement with regard to Summer Company Program. Councillor Ioannidis moves that. All those in favour? All approved? Okay, thank you. That passes. Number 4, the Community Environmental Improvement Grants. Sorry? Okay. Councillor Ioannidis moves the improvement grants. All those in favour? And that passes.
Councillor Fernandez, just before you go
Sorry?
on, you didn't take the second reading of the bylaws, so I'll move those for you.
Thank you. Second reading of the bylaws. All those in favour? And that passes. And number 5, the Potential Dangerous Dog Designation Appeal, moved by Councillor Yanetsky. All those, any questions? All those in favour? That passes. Number 6 is done. Number 7, Neighbourhood Association Affiliation. The Community Services Department, dated December, that lists all the proposed neighbourhood associations as listed in the Community Services Department.
Got 2 people
report.
with questions. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yep. Okay. Question, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to that particular page. I have 5 neighborhood associations in my ward, of which 2 of them overlap, which is fine. I have no concern about 4 of them, but the one I have concern about is the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association. I'm just wondering whether they're existent or not, because I've heard nothing about them, no action, there's no activities. I think they were more political than anything else, and I'm wondering why they're there. I don't even know who the person in charge is or anything, if there is anybody. So I'm just looking for some assistance.
Mr. May.
Through you, if they're on this list, staff have had some level of interaction with them. What I can suggest is, I think it does no harm to approve the list with them on there. But I can put you in touch with Ms. Campbell, and she can put you in touch with the correct individual leading that neighborhood association.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. We need a mover for that. Councillor Marsh moves that. All those in favour again? It passes unanimously.
Councillor Fernandez, sorry.
Yes.
Can I ask the clerk, because I apologize if I messed up earlier. Did we take a vote on number 6 or no?
Yes, because I moved it.
Yeah, he moved it. Did we not take a vote on it? Yes. We did take a vote on it. Okay, I thought so, because I was just being told that we didn't take a vote on it, and I thought we did.
I moved it initially back in the beginning.
Yeah, no, I know that, and that's okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Nope,
So
that's
go
fine.
ahead, Councillor Fernandez.
I'm sure that our delegations were wondering why they were still here. Thank you for your patience. Number 8, gas line pipeline abandonment during the winter, Ottawa Street South to accommodate LRT. Any questions? Moved by Councillor Yanetsky. Any questions?
Councillor Etherington.
Councillor Etherington, you have a question.
Questions to staff. Could staff tell me is the extra cost to us for this project $187,000? Am I correct there?
Who could answer that? Ms. Fletcher.
Through you, Councillor Fernandez, that is correct. The additional cost is related to time-sensitive, this is related to the ion construction. The schedule has been delayed and we're now into winter works. It is Kitchener Utilities' intention to go back to the region to recoup some costs for the winter works.
Ms. Fletcher, how many other of our projects into the winter involve changes that are going to result in extra costs for Kitchener? I have indications there are at least 4 more projects coming, and I just wondered what we're doing about those costs. I guess I wanted to ask you whether you have a total estimated cost for all of these.
Through the chair, I think as the mayor has indicated, this is a design-build project, so we don't have a total estimated cost. If the council member would like us to follow up on any projects that we know about at this point, we can do so, but I don't have that information here tonight.
Okay. Can you give me an opinion on why this is happening? I don't understand why this work is being pushed into the winter. We had a very mild weather leading up to this whole issue. Do you know why this is being pushed into winter months at extra cost?
Through the chair, I don't know the specifics. There is an indication in the report that some of this work was delayed due to Oktoberfest and due to some other activities.
That was one item. Does GrandLink pay penalties when it runs late on projects?
Through the chair, I don't know. I don't know the structure of the contract with GrandLinks.
I can just jump in and respond if I can, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
There are performance requirements built into the contract.
Thank you.
Are those time limits, Mr. Mayor?
As I understand it, they're associated with time and performance.
So I assume they're running late at our expense.
I wouldn't necessarily read that into it. They're tied into the completion of the contract of construction at the end of the contract.
Okay. I'd appreciate if, and I think I've already said this once, so I don't want to repeat myself, but I'd appreciate if council is kept up to date on the kind of money we're having to pay out despite negotiations because we're doing work in the winter. So I would ask staff if that could be done. I think they've already had that request, so thank you.
No other questions? We had a mover on this, did we?
I moved it.
Okay, Councillor Nexi moved it. Do we need a seconder on this as well? No. Okay. All those in favour? And that passes.
Move that the committee rise and report. All in favor.
All in favour? Thank you. That the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
Is there a seconder for that?
Seconder for that?
Councillor, no, I do this one now.
I'm sorry.
Councillor Yanetsky, you're seconding. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Davey, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed and numbered serially by the clerk. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Marsh that we adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.